Hi there, I'm Mary Susie from Bead Me a Story, and today I'm going to show you how to make this pair of queens bracelet. This is a very simple pattern. In this pattern, I'm going to show you how to make squares out of the rhinestones, and then we'll also learn to make strips out of the rhinestones. We're using two different sizes of rhinestones in this project, both a 5mm Chateau Monte as well as a 4mm Chateau Monte, so that you can see that our sapphire rhinestones are slightly larger than our crystal rhinestones. That makes this a really good first project to work with because the 5mm rhinestones are quite a bit easier to mount onto jump rings than the 4mm. So you get practice with both sizes and you get practice with making both of the shapes that we like to make with the rhinestones. And then we're going to actually do the chainmail portion, which is the portion where we link all of these rhinestone components together. So I think you'll learn a lot from this. If you haven't done rhinestone projects before, this one's a great one to start out with, and the finished product is absolutely gorgeous. So I hope you enjoy this video. Let's go ahead and get started. So to start a pair of queens weave, the first thing we want to do is make up our components. So we're going to make two different kinds of components. The first one's going to look like this, and you can see this is a square, and it has two larger rhinestones and two smaller rhinestones in it. And then the next component that we're going to make is I refer to as a strip. So this is going to be a strip that has two rhinestones in it and three jump rings in it. Okay, so the first one we're going to make is this one because it has the larger rhinestones. If you're just getting started with this, this will be a little bit easier for you to work with. And you notice I've pre-opened all my jump rings. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my first open jump ring, and I'm going to turn this Chateau Monte over to the back side. It has 4 holes on the back. And basically what you want to do is, you don't want to hold it like this and kind of come in from the side. You can see that your prong of your jump ring is just going in completely the wrong direction. So you kind of want to come up from underneath it, and you want this prong to go straight into this hole. Okay, I'll show you that a little bit more close up. It's going to go straight into that hole. And then we're going to tilt the rhinestone up, and it's going to find its way around the corner and out the next hole. And that happens pretty naturally. Then we want to pick up one of our 4mm Montes. And these are quite a bit smaller than this first one, so this will present a little bit more of a challenge. But again, I'm going to be coming from underneath. I'm going to make sure I'm going straight into the hole, and then letting the rhinestone tilt up slightly and pass out the next hole that's around the corner from the first one. Okay, and then we'll close this jump ring. Okay, then I'll take a second jump ring, and I'm gonna go, I've got 2 remaining holes in the crystal one that I'm working with, which is my 4mm Chateau Monte. And again, I'm coming from underneath it, going straight into the hole, and letting it tilt and coming back out the next hole. Now this was a little bit tighter, but that's okay. You never want to force it. Don't force it through that next hole. You just want to kind of tilt this jump ring up or down or back and forth until it can find its way out that next hole. And then we'll pick up our next 5mm Monte, go into the hole, come around the corner and out the next hole. And close the jump ring. And then I'm going to take my next jump ring. We're going to work on the other 2 holes of this Chateau Monte. I'm going to go in 1 hole, across the corner, out the next hole, and then we'll pick up a 4mm Chateau Monte. This is our last one, and let it go around the corner and out the second hole. Okay, so we have 2 holes left on this Chateau and Monty that's on the end. Okay, this newest one we added, and then there'll be 2 holes left on this first one. So I'm going to take my 4th jump ring. So you can see at this point we have 4 Montys, but only 3 jump rings. So we're gonna pass through our 4mm first. So just make sure you're going straight into the hole, coming out the next hole. And then what we wanna do is we wanna lift that 5mm Monty from the beginning up to meet up with this jump ring. And I'm gonna go into one hole and let it come back out the other hole that's remaining. And then we will close this jump ring. Okay. So at this point, before you lay this down, you can just make sure that all of your jump rings look like they are closed as perfectly as you can possibly close them. They all meet up nicely. Okay, you'll always have like a little seam, and that's okay, but you want these to match up exactly. And that is our first component. And I just want to point out, I have done several pair of queens tutorials, and I have the 5mm going horizontally, and I have the 4mm going vertically. And you can see what that's going to look like with our second component we're about to make in between them. Let me just straighten this out. Okay, you can see it like that. But when we go to attach these, you could also do it like this too. So you could have a completely different looking bracelet if you just turn that and do it in a different direction. So whichever way you prefer to do it is just fine. In this particular design, I am going to do the sapphire or the 5mm Montys on the horizontal, but I just want to point out that it can be done in the other direction, and I know I have some other kits where it is done in the other direction. So just so that you're aware of that, it's the exact same thing. It's just which direction we turn the square. Okay, so now for our second component, all we're going to use, we're going to push our 5mm Montys off to the side, and we're only going to be using 4mm Montys. So that's why I want you to do the squares first, so you can kind of start getting the hang of things before you start working with just the smaller Montys. But the principles are the same. We're just going to go in from underneath one, go in one hole, let it come around the corner and out the next hole, and then we're going to pick up a second one, go in one hole, let it come around the corner and out the next hole. Okay? And then we're going to close our jump ring. Okay, and then for this component, this is just a strip. So we have our 2 rhinestones on there, and we're going to end up with, of course, 2 rhinestones and 3 jump rings. So all we need to do at this point is just add the jump rings to the ends. So we're going to use the remaining holes that are left in our rhinestones and apply a jump ring on each of these. Okay, so flip this over so you can see the holes. Oops. Now it has a handle. You'd think it'd be easier to hold on to, but sometimes not. Okay, so go straight into this hole around the corner and out the next hole. And that is the second component that you need to learn to make to do this. So at this point, we really haven't done any chainmail. We have only done mounting rhinestones onto jump rings. This isn't really traditional chainmail. This is a different thing that I've kind of come up with to incorporate the rhinestones into the chainmail. So at this point, I'm going to show you, we're going to lay out our work, you know, one after the other. You do have a size chart in your kit, so make as many of these components as you need to make your completed bracelet, and then we're going to start linking them together. And I just want to point out that this first strip, this is what's going to attach to your clasp. Okay, so So to attach the beginning and end to a clasp is really no big deal because we're just going to use jump rings to link directly to a 3-hole clasp at the end, okay? So, so just to get us started, I'm going to start with one of these squares and show you how it's going to get attached to one of these other components. Okay, so basically when we start out, and actually maybe I'll do it in this direction. I'll do the strip first and then the square. And I think you'll understand why when I show this to you. So basically what we want to do is we want to pick up our strip and we're going to pass our first jump ring through the center jump ring of the strip. Now notice that that strip is facing the right side. The rhinestones are facing the right side. So when I pick up this component, I want the rhinestones to face the left side. These are going to be back to back to each other. So the rhinestones in the components as we link them together need to be back to back. Okay, so I just passed through one of the jump rings of the square, and in this case I was above the sapphire color, so I was above the 5. Okay, and I just linked those together. So I'm on the center jump ring on the one that's all crystal, and I'm above the 5mm sapphire rhinestone in the square. Okay, and then I'm going to do this a second time. So I'm going to pass through the same center ring, and then I'm going to pass through the same one of the square, the same jump ring of the square, and then I'll go ahead and close this jump ring, and that is our first connection complete. So every connection that we do is going to be doubled in this project, okay? So now the next thing we want to do is we want to go from the below the sapphire. Okay, so below our 5mm rhinestone, and then again back through the same center jump ring of the strip. And even when I turn this around, you can see that these rhinestones are back to back on each other. So when I flatten this out, you can see that everything, all of the rhinestones are going to be facing towards you. And then I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to pass through the same jump ring of the square and through the center jump ring of the strip component. I'm going to close this jump ring, and I noticed that this last one I did, I don't like how that jump ring was closed. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to straighten that back out again so it's as perfect as I can get it. We're shooting for perfection, probably never achieving it, but that is the goal, is to not even be able to see where the jump ring connects to itself. Okay, so let me lay this down. So again, we had our strip component first, and you can see I've linked both pairs of jump rings to the center of that. And now I'm going to bring in 4 more jump rings, and I'm going to be connecting the outside jump rings of each strip to the same jump ring that I connected to on the square the first time around. So each of these is going to end up with 4 jump rings coming out of it, and these outside jump rings of the strip will have 2 jump rings connecting them to the square. Okay, so I'll just pick this up. Now at this point, you don't have to look at it as back to back anymore. If you lay this out on your hand so it's kind of flat, you can go down into one jump ring and then up out of the next jump ring. If you're holding it properly, that's what'll happen. So try and scoop your work up with your non-dominant hand from underneath and let it kind of just drape on your hand so that you can see it and you can see all the work and all the jump rings. And then I'm going to do a second, so just like before, now I'm on the top jump ring of the strip, and I'm going to connect to this same jump ring of the square. I do have this turned around. If you notice, I'm kind of turning the work around just so everything is easier to reach for me. And then I'm going to do this other side so you can see I don't have anything attaching this end of my strip. And we're going to use 2 jump rings to attach this strip to the square. Okay, so there is 1 jump ring, and then here is our second jump ring. Okay, so this is our first connection, but basically this is going to happen. This is how we're going to connect the entire chain that we're working on. So you can see we did these middle ones first, and then we did 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Okay, and now I'm going to bring in another strip, and you'll see that we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to start by connecting the center of the strip above the sapphire, and then the center of the strip below the sapphire, and then we'll connect the outside jump rings to each of these same jump rings that are part of the square. Okay, so once again, these rhinestones are facing to my right, so the larger portion of the chain that I've been working on, these rhinestones will be facing left. These are all back to back. That way when I pick up the work and flatten it out, these are all going to match up. Now this, I just want to show you this jump ring. I couldn't see it when I picked it up. You see how oblong that is, and it's not matching it up at all? Okay, let's just get rid of that jump ring completely. That's no good. We don't want to use that in our work, and we're going to throw that away. You need to use discernment if you want your finished jewelry to look beautiful when you're done. You know, you need to make sure that the materials that don't look good don't get used in your work. Okay, so the rhinestones are back to back once again. I'm connecting the center of the strip to the top jump ring of the square component, and I'm going to do that twice. Okay, and then I am going to attach the center of the strip to below the 5mm rhinestone. And I'm going to do that once again twice. And you notice this kind of turns around on me. Now my strip is on the left-hand side. You're just turning your work to, you know, make it easier to reach where you need to reach. But I'm still laying it out between each step on my hands so that everything lengthens out and I can make sure that all the jump rings went into the right locations. Okay, so I have attached the centers, and now I'm going to use 2 jump rings. I'm going to attach this same jump ring of the square and go to the top outside of the strip component. I'm going to do that twice. I think I need some more jump rings here. So I got one on. I'm going to do the second one. So basically there'll be 8 jump rings connecting each component to the next component. And you're just going to continue doing that the whole length of the bracelet until it's completed. Okay, and now I'm just doing the other side. So I had 6 jump rings, and now I have 8 jump rings connecting these together in total. Okay, and that's basically it. So I'll lay this out flat for you to see. Okay, and if it pushes up a little, you can just flatten it out by pushing it down with your hand. That's totally okay. I've been doing that for years and it doesn't seem to hurt it at all. And so here's our next component that we're going to join into, the next square. So again, we'll be joining from the center to the top, center to the bottom, and then the outside ones. Then we're going to connect another strip, and then we'll connect another square, and so on and so forth until we get to the end of this bracelet. Now we do want to end on a strip so that if we have a 3-hole component, we're going to connect 3 times over here, and we'll be connecting 3 times on this end too. But I just want to point out, if this doesn't fit you exactly perfect, you could always start and end on one of the squares as well, and it certainly wouldn't hurt anything. So then you would want a 2-hole component to attach to. But what came in your kit was a 3-hole component, and that's what we'll be using here. But just keep in mind that you can make that adjustment. So if you do decide to make more, that's completely an option for you. Okay, so just go along and keep on working, and then I will show you how to attach a clasp to the end of this. Okay, so you can see that this is at the full length that we want the bracelet to be now, and I'm just going to real quickly show you how to attach the clasp, but this is very simple with really most of the rhinestone designs. We just basically have 3 jump rings at the end of the piece, and I usually start in the middle just because that one's going to be the hardest to reach. And I'm just going to attach that center jump ring of the strip to the center hole or center ring of the clasp. I'm going to do that once, and then I'm going to do it a second time. These holes are large enough on this clasp to do 2, so whenever you have enough room to do 2, you might as well make the bracelet as sturdy as you possibly can. If you only have room to do 1, because we're doing, you know, a lot of times when you're doing much smaller sizes than this, you may only have the room to do 1. And usually in that case, I try and make the jump ring as small as I can to add a little bit of sturdiness to it. But you see, we're still getting 3 connections out of this, so this is going to be a very sturdy bracelet. And we've got 3 connections, and we're doing each of those connections with 2 jump rings. So that's going to make it nice and strong for wearing. Okay, and you see that this is just very simple. Okay, I'm just going to do one of these. I'll finish on the other side, but I just want to see, I want you to see how we bring this up and around. And again, we have the strip on this side, so we're going to start by connecting the center of the strip to the center ring in the clasp, and then we'll do either side of it, and then our bracelet will be complete. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this project. This is a great first-time beginner project because, of course, as I said, it uses both sides of our Chateau Montes, and the 5mm are very easy to work with. You can, of course, change the color in it to any color that you want it to be, and the rest is just silver and crystal. So basically anything goes in this pattern. It's really lovely, and I think you'll enjoy wearing it. And then just to remind you, I do have a video that will show you how to apply resin to these little prongs of your rhinestones to prevent them from catching on your clothes. So that's a really good thing to do. If this was your first project on my YouTube channel, you can also find the video showing how to coat the prongs to make this even more wearable than it already is, and to prevent it from catching on clothes. And I hope you'll try some more of these projects, because working with rhinestones is super shiny and super fun, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.